a structure that exists in many ancient texts, including the Bible, where the symbolic language of cosmology is often analyzable at multiple layers. So, for instance, in the Bible, it talks a lot about heaven and earth. And we think, okay, heaven, some place that we don't know where it is, and earth is this planet. But heaven and earth meant it had multiple meanings depending on what level of reality you're considering it through. And that's why these stories pack so much meaning, because it can tell you one story, but it is applicable to multiple layers. So heaven and earth could mean, I may not have these exactly right, but like the principle and then the action that actually manifests the principle, or mind and matter, or even a leader and the community. So it's kind of like the impetus to do something, the organizing principle, and then the actual action of manifestation or substantiation. So this this book is actually pointing to the fractal structure of reality through a metaphysical descriptor, in the same way that a book like the Bible points to the metaphysical structure of reality through symbolic descriptors.
Yes, 100%. And one of the things that I've found most exciting, and when we've had conversations in the past, is a strong belief that the whole point of cultural evolution is to assimilate the valuable things that have been created by our ancestors, assimilate those things, upgrade them, expand upon them, fix them where they're broken, update. We're in a constant baton race of handing on the flame, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the metaphysics of quality becomes a new skeleton key through which many other subjects, such as theology, mythology, the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
can be given a whole new lease of life, which
Yes.
I not ironically, which frees them from the static interpretations that have
Yes.
devalued them over the last few thousand years. Because the only thing that's stopping biblical mythology, and Peterson, JBP has demonstrated this the last 5 years, is all of this potential value is within those scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes down to the means by which you interpret them, so that they
Yeah.
become understandable at multiple levels of analysis. And
Yes.
in other words, new meta structures need to be developed to free that material from static prisons that
Right.
limit their exposure. And I think that Leela does that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this, which is interesting, because I messaged this to you the other day. I heard it on a Peterson podcast, that logos actually entails the gathering together of things under a common name. So it's as if this metaphysics is bringing together, morality, theology, evolution, science more broadly, under a single rubric, so that we can break down the divisions that we currently have between them, which are manifesting themselves as conflict in the world, right? This conflict between totalitarianism, relativism, all of these things that think they live on an island. This actually becomes one element of a broader whole.
Something you just said sparked a connection. You mentioned the idea that this is all fractal. There's 4 levels: inorganic value, or inorganic patterns of value, which before we recognize anything sentient in a biological sense. So this is chemistry and the table of elements all interacting in space before any planets are formed. And it's the forces that come with that. There's biological patterns of value, and that's when you start to see cellular consciousness starts to collaborate in communities that we call organisms. And then there's social patterns of values, which is when organisms begin to collaborate in organisms that we call communities and societies. And then there's intellectual patterns of value, which is when those societies build ideas and principles and ethics and frameworks, a framework for higher thinking, which is where we get scientific rationalism and science. And that's the emergent property of societies. And they all rely upon each other. They're all interdependent. If an intellectual idea destroys the society upon which it rests, then it's self-defeating.
Yes.
And if the society which comes up with rules for communal guidelines, if they betray those rules, it just exactly. And then you go down the path of evolution. So with that setup in mind,
and each higher layer, just I'd say to keep in mind, is more transcendent of time, right? An idea is it's timeless almost, so long as the structure is maintained. But at a lower level, say an organic level, clearly individual organisms live and die.
yes, and you could argue that like an actual something that you can correlate with, one-to-one correlation is that the further up you go in the complexity of the evolutionary hierarchy, the less the complex entity has immediate time preference. It doesn't need
Right, it has a
something right
lower
straight
time
away.
preference as it ascends, yeah, as it
Yes.
becomes more
So
timeless.
so
Yep.
let's take the idea of a gazelle on the plains. It responds only to high time preference stimuli, which is I'm going to eat this grass,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gets attacked by a lion, and then it runs away, and then within 5 seconds, the gazelle has completely forgotten whatever the hell just happened. It hasn't got a memory, and it goes
Yeah.
back to eating the grass.
Yeah.
So its life is trapped in a cycle of high time preference activity, of
Right.
fear and consumption.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get to humans, we've through valuing, let's say, principles of community and principles of economic efficiency,
Mhm.
we've effectively staved off the high time preference issues and
Yes.
given ourselves room for play. And
Yeah.
play is a extremely valuable asset for expanding even more time preference, or
Mhm.
gaining ourselves more freedom from the
Yes.
limitations of time preference or high
Yes.
time preference.